Good evening. We have arrived at the moment of interruption. The adjournment debate has been chosen, an announcement earlier in today, won by the member for Cape Breton West. And the resolution reads, therefore be it resolved that the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage reevaluate the request for $5,000 to enable the Dockside Ceilidh Performing Arts Series to meet their obligations and prepare for the 24th season without this funding pressure. The Speaker now recognizes the Honourable Member for Cape Breton North.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very pleased to rise in response to the resolution that has been brought forward today. I regret the fact that this resolution has to hit the floor because, again, the Minister and his colleagues voted against this resolution as part of support for the Dockside Ceilidhs in North Sydney at Marine Atlantic, which we know is a signature event in the region. And again, when you look at the resolution, I think we need to go to the core, was asking the Minister to reevaluate the request, not to admonish the Minister or criticize him, but ask him to reevaluate a legitimate request with regards to funding for the Dockside Ceilidhs. And to provide a little perspective for the Minister and some other colleagues here, we all know this was started, Mr. Speaker, in 1987 at Marine Atlantic Incorporated. The then terminal manager, now Councillor Gordon MacLeod of the CBRM, worked with the president of the Northside Highland Dancers Association, Kay Batherson, a very well-known volunteer in the community. Aside from this, she's very well known as well with her volunteer efforts for the Terry Fox Run and other community initiatives. So a long history. And even though this was started in 1987, her tenure of working in the cultural community went from 1961 to 2009. So this is not a passing interest in community involvement. It's been a long-standing one. And I would say, thankfully, to the terminal manager at the time, the next 5 terminal managers have continued to work with a community group through the partners of Marine Atlantic Incorporated, Tourism, Culture and Heritage, Enterprise Cape Breton Corporation, the Dancing Association, and the community. And what we also know, for the benefit of the members, is that this is a program that operated 3 days and 2 nights a week, very good scheduling from late June to the end of August. And Mr. Speaker, as we know, it involves music and the song and dance specific to the culture of Nova Scotia and especially that of Cape Breton. And for tourists and local people alike, this has been a focal center point of attracting people, to the point we see hundreds of people a day. And on average, the statistics show that 250 to 300 people go to each performance. And when there's events around this province, Mr. Speaker, where a $5,000 investment would have gone into an event just for one performance, let alone something that stretches an entire tourist season. And this has involved dozens of students gaining experience, showcasing their talent, and adding to the cultural vibrancy of their area, and indeed being able to highlight that to tourists and visitors and locals alike to show how good they are. To the point, there have been tourists throughout all of Canada, every province and territory, that have witnessed the performances there from the United States, Europe, and beyond. And also, another added attraction is because the local RV parks that have tourists coming and going, they list this as an area where the people coming can go, and they go and enjoy the entertainment and go back again, thus extending a stay in Cape Breton and in Nova Scotia that otherwise they may have gone elsewhere. And I think, Mr. Speaker, this was a win-win effort on their part. And you had the community, the corporation, and the culture of the area all coming together. In fact, to speak to understanding of culture, the coordinators for this program, which are students, had to be French-speaking to make sure they accommodated those tourists coming in from Quebec or any other French-speaking Canadians or travelers to the area. And again, we've had the participation of other non-student, like local artists, musicians, singers, and dancers that have performed in helping these students to hone their talents and skills. And indeed, what we see is enabling them as well, people that have come and written their own music and performed for the first time there in a showcase they otherwise wouldn't have had. So, Mr. Speaker, when we're talking about this, we're talking about an investment. And when you look at the significance of every week, 5 performances, week after week through the tourist season, a request to the Minister and his department to support them is not unreasonable. And when you consider that everything from fiddling to step dancing to vocalists, guitarists, Cape Breton piano style, and we know there's a Cape Breton piano style that they get to showcase, and to highlight the culture of the area. And it also allows people to help promote that these students are ambassadors for the province of Nova Scotia, building on the very mandate that the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage would have, and therefore would be a very small investment, because we know the cost of advertising is very high, but to actually support students, to support volunteers in the community to do this is a very important thing. And Mr. Speaker, they do have a guest book they've kept. And that guest book that's there is waiting with a spot open for the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage to come. And he can personally come and experience that. And they want him to sign that book and to see the value, to see the power of the presence of what they're able to do on an outdoor stage at the parking lot of Marine Atlantic. To recognize that we had and have had millions, but every year, hundreds of thousands of people that have come through the Port of North Sydney, the gateway to Newfoundland and Labrador, have been entertained, have been given an opportunity to experience and to reflect on the culture of our area, which is strong and diverse, and something that's very important. And I can say, since it was started in 1987, 23 seasons have gone by. They now don't know if they can have a 24th season. They've had to borrow from another not-for-profit group to try and get through this year. Now, Mr. Speaker, they wrote, and I wrote to the minister, and the minister said, well, they should talk to the people in the region. And then they get a turn down from the program, and we know that they meet. Everything I've said, I would think, Mr. Speaker, meets the festival and events criteria that would be set out. And if not that, the minister has the discretion, the minister has the ability, and his colleagues can make a choice. Because I can tell you, since it started, over those 23 years, it wasn't just a Conservative government that was in, there was a Liberal government. And the member from Cape Breton South was a development minister that also supported the Dockside Cayleys and chose to rise to the occasion and the need of the community and help support them. So it's transcended political boundaries and political administrations, and it is very confusing why the minister, with $5,000, and again, to reevaluate his decision, to consider the impact. And as I've said, since 1961, Kay Batherson is a community activist, and someone's been involved, and anyone that knows Kay, she's a person of substance and believes in the community. And Mr. Speaker, I know you know her. So when she says she has a need and she's having trouble and doesn't think she can do next year, I'll tell you, the impact is going to be more than $5,000. And the community will not stand by and watch her not supported by the provincial government. And I, again, go that we're asking the minister to reevaluate the request. He has an opportunity. It's never the wrong time to do the right thing to help support the Dockside Cayleys. The former minister of Economic Development and Tourism, the member for Cape Breton South, saw fit to do it. His colleagues saw fit to do it in government. We've seen fit to do it. And the discretion is there by the minister to do it. And then they'll say, well, if program areas were cut back. But I want to reflect, Mr. Speaker, and quickly, I know time will run out, but let's look at it. They had time and lots of effort now to hire $100,000 consultants at a pop to try and justify what they're doing. No hesitation to fund $100,000, but they won't fund the Dockside Cayleys and the talent from the area. Mr. Speaker, no problem by the Minister of Finance to add $341 million in debt this year by doing a prepay that his own auditors he hired at a cost of $100,000. He ignored their advice. That $100,000 would have gone a long way throughout Nova Scotia to help groups like Dockside Cayleys that are doing good work, getting a return on the value for the money that's invested, supporting local communities, supporting our youth, giving them meaningful experience, supporting the very community, and growing the ability for us to promote Nova Scotia, in this case as well Cape Breton, as a gateway area. We talk about Atlantic Gateway. We talk about energy gateways. Well, we have a people gateway, and the people of the area deserve to be invested in, and the people that volunteer don't deserve to be dismissed. And the minister should have an opportunity to sit down with those individuals to help them out. Again, it's not the wrong time for the minister to do the right thing. There is a spot in the guest book there that he can sign and be seen as a supporter and an endorser of a great initiative in the community. And Mr. Speaker, if the minister wasn't fully aware of the significance and the magnitude of what's gone on with Dockside Cayleys in these few moments, I believe I've been able to help provide some of that scope. And that's why people like myself in the Progressive Conservatives, that's why the member from Cape Breton South and his colleagues, when they're in government, they supported them. You know the people involved. You know they're credible. Mr. Speaker, you know when I was a minister that we would have discretionary money, and if it was a need in the community, we'd go out and do it. Whether it was a youth center, whether it was a community group, we did it. And I did it in your area, not because you were in opposition, because you were doing something good for your community and it was the right thing to do. Well, there's something good going on at the Marine Atlantic terminal area at the performance stage, Mr. Minister. It is the right thing to do, and it's not too late to do the right thing for the community. Thank you very much.
The Speaker now recognizes the Honourable Member for Cape Breton South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Just pleased to rise and support my colleague from Cape Breton North in regards to the resolution before us this evening. And indeed, the dockside ceilidh has been part of our culture for the past 24 years, Mr. Speaker. Very important part of it. And while it doesn't get the kind of recognition it deserves over the years, it was very important for that event to happen and be able to continue to happen in the Cape Breton area. You know, one has to wonder, Mr. Speaker, whether or not decisions like this that were made to deny the princely sum of $5,000 to a group of volunteers in the area headed by Kay Batherson, you have to wonder why the decision was made. And I would hope, Mr. Speaker, that that decision was not a punitive decision made because of the recent outcome of the election in Cape Breton North. I would hope that's not the case. I hope perhaps they could give a better reason than that for not giving the $5,000. But I can't, for the life of me, I can't come up with a reason why they would not allow $5,000 and for this very worthwhile event. I can recall, and the member from Cape Breton North, himself a former minister in the last government, and making reference to me being the Minister of Economic Development and Tourism back in the late 90s. And I can recall a number of these events that were happening in Cape Breton. And wherever possible, we certainly took the opportunity to go down, to talk to the people that were putting these events on, to find out firsthand what was happening with these events, how valuable they were to the community. And I would suggest to the minister opposite that he take the opportunity to go down and sit down and have a cup of tea with Kay Batherson and her people, and perhaps bring a check for $5,000 along with him. You know, he said that he was in Cape Breton area before having tea with people from the partnership. Well, maybe he can go back there again. And while he's at it, the member from Cape Breton North suggested he sign the guest book. Well, you know, I suggest he do that as well. You know, Mr. Speaker, it always seems to be a struggle in Cape Breton when we're talking about advancing the cause culturally of our area and economically, and the two of them are entwined. You know, like you can't have one without the other. And in the case of an event like the Dockside ceilidh, and like the importance of Marine Atlantic to our area and to the gateway to Newfoundland, as the member from Cape Breton North pointed out, to have the kind of decision made that throws a pall over all of that doesn't make any sense. You know, it's come to the stage where the Destination Cape Breton people are suggesting that perhaps the time has come for them to take matters into their own hands, and maybe the Department of Tourism or the Department of Economic Development, whichever wants to handle it, could look at a block of funding to the partnership in Cape Breton and have them look after these community events that are ongoing year in and year out, and some of the larger ones who have to go cap in hand all the time to government. And I'm not convinced, Mr. Speaker, that the minister has done this decision or other decisions or taken this decision unilaterally. I believe that the problem we have in Cape Breton is one of it could be systemic, that people in the department up here are saying that, well, you know, if you're going to cut anything, let's try to cut some of these fares out that are in the Cape Breton area. And I go back, Mr. Speaker, to the Doers and Dreamers Guide. You know, that is not done by that minister, or it wasn't done when I was Minister of Tourism, or it wasn't done when the previous government was there. It's done basically by people in the Department of Tourism, aided by consultants and other people who put together a production like this to be distributed. And if you look from cover to cover in the Doers and Dreamers Guide, you see very little reference to Cape Breton and its events. overall. And I would suggest to the minister that he take a few moments and go through the Doers and Dreamers Guide cover to cover and make up his own judgment as to whether or not he feels that Cape Breton is getting adequately portrayed as a destination point and a valuable cultural experience that it should be getting in this province. I suggest to you that the answer he will get will bear out my conviction that perhaps the people in Cape Breton have to move in another direction and not depend on the provincial Department of Tourism to get equal billing as to the rest of the province. Now, I'm speaking from a member who comes from Cape Breton, and I have a deep feeling for my area, as does the member from Cape Breton North, as do the other Cape Breton members who are sitting here in this House. And I say again, Mr. Minister, that I would hope that you would take the opportunity in this particular instance, not only to evaluate whether or not you feel that the great icons, tourist icons and developmental icons that are in Cape Breton are getting a fair play from this government, or whether or not you feel there's room for improvement. If you feel there's room for improvement, then I think you have a responsibility to speak to the people in your department about the word fairness in distributing tourist dollars throughout the province, and also economic development dollars. And I say that because you do wear a dual hat here. So I believe that, Mr. Speaker, we had some things going in Cape Breton over the years that we latched onto and we started to improve upon and grow, and all of a sudden somebody in the bureaucracies decide that Cape Breton may be getting a little bit too far ahead, or maybe moving in a forward direction too fast. And it's been my experience that if you don't keep the vigil up all the time, we always seem to lose in Cape Breton. And this is another instance. You know, I would have never thought that this government would turn down a resolution put forth by the Minister of Cape Breton North, or the member from Cape Breton North, the former minister, to have the government agree that $5,000 was a good investment. That's all it said. A good investment for Dockside Cayley in the north side area. I'm sure that the people down there are still scratching their heads as to how punitive a government could be to deny a resolution with so little financial obligation, when indeed the member from Cape Breton North outlined some of the ridiculous expenses this government has taken on to make themselves look good politically in the past couple of months. So, you know, I would say to you, Mr. Speaker, that it's time that the Destination Cape Breton were giving a fair shake by the Department of Tourism. They were brought into these discussions, that they set their own priorities for tourism dollars that will be spent in our section of Nova Scotia, our great little area that we call home in Cape Breton. And I would hope that the government would realize that for the amount of money that's being spent in Cape Breton, the volunteer sector down there is way and far above doing more to grow the tourism and cultural sector in our area than indeed the government is. And thank heavens we have the people in our area like Kay Batherson, and like all the others who are involved with the various productions that go on throughout the years, including Celtic Colours and all the other events that happen throughout rural Cape Breton as well, that make us a great place to visit and a great place to spend some time. Now's a good time to be down there, by the way, Mr. Speaker, with the leaves turning and Celtic Colours coming this week and all that kind of great stuff that's happening at Cape Breton. And I would hope that the minister would take the time to get in his car and drive down there and have a look at the wonderful leaves turning and the events that are going on now with Celtic Colours. And while he's down there, to go in and see Kay Batherson, and perhaps just maybe he can pick a check out of his pocket and say, "Here, Kay, this is for all your work in the past, and this is for all your dedication, and this is something that we think that you should have." And I think once the minister makes himself familiar with what's happening down there, he will agree with me and the member from Cape Breton North that this is a great investment Imagine $5,000 and the goodwill that brings with the volunteers down there. And you know, I would suggest that the minister would probably have the opportunity to sign the guest book and maybe even get his picture taken with that $5,000 and perhaps have it enshrined down there in a place of honor. So, Mr. Speaker, for that kind of money, I would encourage the minister to drive down to Cape Breton, see what we're all about, you know, and have a cup of tea, Mr. Minister, with Kay and the group down there. And I thank you for your time, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank the honourable member. The Honourable Minister for Tourism, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise and speak to this matter this evening. And you know what? I am going to Cape Breton on Friday. And I hope to spend a few days on there. Just as soon as the House rises on Friday, I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to drive down. Now, do you know what? The Department of Tourism, Culture and Heritage invests in Nova Scotia's arts and cultural community in many ways. We are very supportive and we support the growth of our province's creative economy. Nova Scotia's art and cultural sector is estimated to contribute more than $1 billion to the provincial economy and generate 28,000 jobs. We recognize how important that contribution is to communities, and that's why we are working hard to support creativity and artistry excellence throughout the province, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the department received a letter from Mayor John Morgan of the Cape Breton Regional Municipality on June the 25th, 2009, asking the minister to look into the status of the North Side Highland application. Mr. Speaker, I personally inquired to staff about the application and informed Mayor Morgan in writing on August the 6th, 2009, that the association's application under the May the 15th deadline was not successful. In my response, I explained the independent process used to review applications and recommend grant recipients. And I want to, Mr. Speaker, if I may, I will read that letter and I will table it. Dear Mayor Morgan, thank you for your letter of June the 5th, 2009, and the copy of the letter and funding application from the North Side Highland Dancers Association. The North Side Highland Dancers Association applied to the Cultural Activities Program, which, like all funding programs in the Cultural Division, is evaluated by external assessment panels or peer juries. These external panels made recommendations based on the relative merits of the applications received for a particular deadline. This is a highly competitive process, and there is no guarantee that a previously funded activity will continue to receive support. The Northside Highland Dancers Association's application was not successful in the May 15th competition, and they had been advised of the outcome. Should you have any further questions with respect to the application, please contact Mr. Peter Guilford, Director of Programs, and I included his phone number. And this was CC'd to a number of MLAs, including members that are here this evening, and also to Kathleen Batherson, President Director, Northside Highland Dancers Association. Mr. Speaker, I wish to point out that the department's cultural division has provided funding support to the Northside Highland Dancers Association through the Cultural Activities Program 3 times since 2003. They received $5,000 each year in 2005 and again in 2006, and then in 2008 they received $3,250. The department's cultural division makes available $7.7 million every year in grant funding support. This supports artists in arts and cultural organizations engaged in creative programming and activities. That funding includes grants through the Cultural Activities Program, or otherwise called the CAP. The Cultural Activity Program helps build communities through support for arts and cultural activities. Communities can include geographic locations, as well as communities of interest, such as those involved in visual arts, music, or craft. Applications to this program, along with the other cultural funding programs within the department, are reviewed. Mr. Speaker, they are reviewed by an external assessment panel made up of 2 individuals from the cultural sector and a divisional staff person. They, in turn, recommend projects for funding. Mr. Speaker, as with all funding programs in the department, the application for the Cultural Activities Program, it is very competitive. While the department would like to be able to position itself and respond positively to all applications it receives, demand for the program funding oftentimes exceeds available funds. Mr. Speaker, the honourable members should be very well aware that external assessment panels made up of experts from the cultural sector were created. They were created for cultural programs to ensure that the merits of the projects were the determining factor in decisions by the department. Mr. Speaker, I will repeat, to ensure that the merits of the projects were the determining factor in decisions by the department. To re-evaluate a decision.
Point of order. The honourable member for Cape Breton North.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order for the honourable minister, he's talking about program criteria. He's failed to talk about his discretion as a minister to support those initiatives. Mr. Speaker, you know, and as member for Cape Breton Nova, as well as Centre, ministerial discretion was provided to your constituencies, and he's failing to address the fact why he won't do it, even though other ministers have spent hundreds of thousands on frivolous things in the past days.
I think that it's not a point of order. It's it may be a good point, but it's not a point of order, and it's a disagreement between 2 members. And I will now recognize the Honourable Minister of Tourism and Culture and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To re-evaluate a decision by an external assessment panel that followed the proper guidelines for the Cultural Activities Program would be counter to the transparency, Mr. Speaker, I was very polite when the other members of the House spoke. I didn't say 2 words. I would expect the same courtesy.
Order, please. The Honourable Minister of Tourism and Culture has the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have to rely upon transparency and accountability that a peer-reviewed assessment process is meant to foster. The government is committed to peer-reviewed processes. The unfortunate fact is that sometimes there are worthwhile projects that do not receive funding because not enough financial resources are available at that time. It's as simple as that. Not everyone can get funded. Mr. Speaker, while it's not possible to have the external assessment panel re-evaluate its recommendation in this instance, the Northside Highland Dancers Association is able to apply again under one of the other deadlines for the Cultural Activities Program. There are 4 deadlines for the program every year: February the 15th, May the 15th, August the 15th, and November the 15th. Mr. Speaker, I will undertake to make sure the Northside Highland Dancers Association has been made aware of the availability to reapply under a future deadline. Mr. Speaker, the department is working hard to support the arts and cultural sector. As I just mentioned, the Cultural Division provides more than $7.7 million in funding support to the arts and cultural sector every year in Nova Scotia. That support reaches communities and individuals in every corner of the province of Nova Scotia. In Cape Breton alone, over $900,000, actually $930,000 was invested from the department's cultural funding during the 2008-2009 fiscal year. A total of 58 projects received funding, which benefits individual artists, cultural activities, and young people interested in arts and culture.
Order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The time allotted for late debate has expired. I want to thank all the honourable members tonight for an excellent debate. We will now take a short break as we will return to Committee on Supply.
It's called to order. The chair recognizes the honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove. She has approximately 7 minutes left.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify some remarks that we had yesterday around EPAs. Could you just clarify for me, I think you indicated that there were some boards that had indicated they thought they were overstaffed in the EPA area. And I was wondering if you could identify what boards those are for me. And also, within the money that you're transferring to each board, do you in fact send a certain amount for EPAs and educational assistance, or is it just sort of a lump sum?
Thank you. The Honourable, the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, in our earlier discussion about teaching assistance support levels, I mentioned that the province invests about $125 million for special education, and this would fund a TA for one TA for every 104 students on average. Now, most of the boards choose to put in additional money into teacher assistants, and so often their ratios are much lower than the provincial average.
Thank you. Thank you. The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
And yesterday, Mr. Chairman, I believe the minister indicated that there were some boards that thought they were overstaffed by EPAs. If you could please identify which ones those were.
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We don't have that breakdown here, but we can certainly make that information available. And I wouldn't characterize it as overstaffing. I mean, boards know their student populations best, and so they allocate staffing resources according to their budgets and also according to the needs for particular schools, classes, and students. And they have that flexibility within their core budget with the additional special education funding to make those local decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to be certain to point out that I was not the person who initially used the term overstaffed. It was something that the minister said, so I just want to make sure that no one thinks that I think we're overstaffed for EPAs. I do believe that I did ask for a breakdown on what was spent per board on EPAs the other day, and I thought you had a chart that we asked to have tabled. Now I could be wrong on that, but is there such a thing, and if so, could we have it tabled?
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That information was requested by the honourable member, and we are checking with each of the school boards to get that information and compiling that list. So as soon as it is available, we will table it in the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
Now I'd like to move on to post-secondary education, and my first item is the Memorandum of Understanding. And I'd just like to have the minister explain why your government decided to prepay universities for the 2010-2011 fiscal year.
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify the question. Are you asking why the third year of the MOU was paid out early, or are you asking about specific amounts? Thank you.
Thank you.
Out.
Thank you. The honourable member has approximately 1 minute left. The honourable member from Bedford Birch Cove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm asking why it was paid out early.
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's interesting, when I met with some of the university presidents and also with the Council of University Presidents, CONSUP, there was actually some concern expressed about whether or not the new government would honour the commitment, the third-year commitment of the MOU. And certainly one of the factors being considered, I think, in paying it out early was to relieve that anxiety, to ensure that that funding was in place, as well as making sure that there was protected university funding in each year of the budget, And we also bought out the third year because we want to get back to making sure that budget decisions for that year, as much as possible, are included in that year's budget. That's not to say there couldn't be MOUs on other, agreements or criteria or goals for the future or whatever, but we're saying that the financial commitments are most properly placed in the year that of that budget. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes the honourable member for Cumberland South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first of all, I'll begin by thanking the Minister and her staff for the opportunity to ask some questions on behalf of my constituency, Cumberland South. I think the Minister would agree that there have been a lot of challenges within education province-wide, and I think that, I think when you look at rural areas in this province, that a lot of the challenges are more difficult to attempt to resolve. Just the mere fact of distance, geography, terrain, the roads, the weather, and I know that in my area there have been some real challenges in regards, particularly the smaller schools, and with the declining numbers and the boards trying to balance their budgets versus the number of students and providing those services and programs that's determined by the province Department of Education. It is a huge challenge, and I appreciate that, and I do want to begin by commending the Department of Education for it, because I will say that any time I have requests on behalf of my area, the schools and the people I represent, I usually get a very quick response, and I do appreciate that. I just want to begin by asking the Minister, one of the issues that seems every year it's an issue, but this past year, the board, Schenectady Central Regional School Board, I believe, the numbers, I think for the last 2 years they put additional money into free EAs or whatever, TAs or whichever they're being called today. I've heard it different acronyms being used, but in our area they're known as EAs. My understanding, I spoke to the superintendent. There was a huge issue in my area. I met with parents from my own community of Spring Hill, from Oxford, from Amherst. Met with them. They were very concerned as the start of the school year approached with the number of EAs that were going to be displaced. I think originally the number was 60 plus that Schenectady Central was going to would not be calling back, and I believe at the end of the day the number was 30 plus, and I think those are correct numbers. But I was also told in my discussions with the board and with the parents that they were told that there was, as a result of negotiations and a contract that was signed, that EAs would be getting more hours, and I guess that meant more salary, which had an impact on the ability for the board to hire EAs to cover off all the needs, I guess, across the board's jurisdiction. I'm just wondering if the Minister could explain to me, particularly in Schenectady Central, if she's aware of the number of EAs that have actually been displaced this year, if in fact there are any. How it's determined, how the board would determine where there's a need for EAs, because what I was told was that the board would basically guarantee that where there was a need for a child to have an EA or a teacher within the classroom, that EA would be there. Now, my wife just retired after 30 plus years of teaching, and I've watched over the years the change in the classroom, the additional pressures put on teachers in regards to their responsibilities, and I think that I don't think the Minister would take any convincing for the Minister to realize and understand, I guess, and appreciate, and also agree with the fact that as you put more responsibility on the teachers, it does require additional resources in the classroom. Now, again, I've watched that over the years, and I think that that's from the parents' perspective. It's crucial that those resources are in place for the teachers. From the teacher's perspective, it certainly is, and for the other children in the classroom, especially, I think it is as well. That the additional resources that are required in the classroom. So I'm really curious as to how that's determined, whether a classroom would actually have an EA present to provide those services to the teacher. How it's determined through the board from the Department of Education, if there's a criteria province-wide, there's left to the board, and again the funding. I'm really interested to hear as well how the dollars are provided to the board, and why the board then would be expected to take money out of their operating budget to maybe that they would intend it for some other purpose or program, why they would then be expected to use it for EAs.
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank the honourable member for his question. I had the opportunity to discuss this very issue with his school board when I did my tour around the province to meet with each board. And certainly the board was concerned as well. But there's so many different aspects to this, so if you can be patient, I'll try to give you a couple of different perspectives. The Provincial Department of Education contributes about $125 million to special education across the province. Some of that goes towards paying the wages of the teacher assistants. And many boards have chosen to take some of their per pupil enrollment funding and also add that to their special education costs. So back in 2002, there was a special education review committee, and they made a recommendation of one TA, one teacher assistant for every approximately 104 students. So that's the level of teaching assistants that is generally provided in the funding for across all the boards in the province. Now, as I said, boards have a lot of flexibility in reallocating the money, the funding that they get for various levels of staff. So in your board, for example, in 2008, 2009, there were 381 full-time equivalent teacher assistants at 5 hours a day, as the honourable member realizes and referenced earlier. So that created a total number of hours available as a teacher assistant for 1,905 hours. And in this year's budget, there are 34 fewer TAs, and there are 347 full-time equivalent teacher assistants at the 5.5 hours a day, and that creates a total of 1,910 hours. So it actually increases the number of hours slightly, but it's fewer people spread over, paid over a longer period of time. I think some of the early apprehension arose when there were, I think, 3 public information meetings held throughout the board area. And this was during the summer when the TA assignments had not been decided. And I don't think all the TAs who were going to be rehired, you may realize that they're only hired for 10 months of the year. So everyone's laid off in June. And the number who need to be rehired to fill those positions are rehired for September. So in the summer, these meetings were held, and there was a lot of publicity in the paper, a lot of word of mouth discussion in various communities. And a number of parents contacted both the department and their school board members and the school board expressing concern about the loss of TAs. We have to keep in mind as well that every board is going through a period of decline in enrollment. So boards are constantly adjusting their numbers to match the number of students they actually have in classrooms and the number of schools that they have. So this is, the fact that they're readjusting numbers is quite a common occurrence. So I know certainly the parents that contacted the department and that I spoke to, I encouraged them to wait until September and see what actually materialized for their particular son or daughter or ward if they were a guardian. And I also encouraged the MLAs in the area to refer those cases to the school board, which in most situations they did. And many of the concerns never materialized. The TAs were in place in the school, and life went on. The families were quite satisfied. There were a few situations where there was some impact, some change, and by working with their school board member or through school board officials, they're able to reconcile the family's perception of what the student needed with the school board's analysis of where those TAs could be placed. So as far as I understand, most of the situations were worked out to the mutual satisfaction of the families and the school board. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Cumberland South.
Well, thank you, Minister, for that. I do appreciate it. And I know there were many at first, and I think those numbers, I think once the school year started, were probably, some of the problems were probably addressed. I just wonder if boards are taking dollars that are allocated to them for other services and reallocating for EAs, or do you not think that may be jeopardizing some other programming that money was allocated to them in the first place for?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, obviously, they're taking it from another potential use, but certainly that formula, that ratio, was the recommendation of the Special Education Review Committee, and that seemed to be the best guideline for the Provincial Department of Education and the government to use in funding that particular resource.
Thank you. The honourable member from Cumberland South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister. The report recommended a number per 100 and how many? Was it 104 or 140? 104 to 1. So if there was a particular area of the province that had, if it averaged out that it was actually 3 out of the 104. I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that I'm also hearing about some teaching positions that have been removed as well, and I'm wondering if that's as a result of the board having to take some of their monies and put it in for EAs or for special needs children, and actually have to displace some classroom teachers. The money has to come from somewhere, and I think probably 80–85% of most departments' budgets are salaries. So that money that's being used for additional, if the formula doesn't work in a particular area, and the board's forced to take money from their own budget to put in to make up for that, the money's got to be coming from somewhere. And I'm wondering if it's come from classroom teachers who are being displaced as a result.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the honourable member probably realizes, because quite frankly, the education budget is basically the budget that was presented by his party when you were in government. I think there's $29 million extra this year for funding the school boards for public education, and of course choices have to be made. And I remember, 30 years ago when I was on the Dartmouth School Board, we had a certain envelope of money, and we had to decide what the community's priorities were and the school system's priorities, and try to match it up as best we can. Quite frankly, I don't know of any education system in the world that would claim it had sufficient money to meet all the needs of the students that they're trying to educate. So it's always checks and balances, and we do the best we can with the revenue available to the province at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Cumberland South.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the answer, Minister. Would the minister then agree that, and I'll use my own area, the Shenectady Central Regional School Board jurisdiction, that a child who's in a regular classroom who requires special assistance or requires a resource person or requires an EA that meets the criteria, that child would have, in fact, that person in the classroom with them?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That certainly would be an assessment done by the school boards. And I just want to remind the honourable member that that most of the TAs are in place to help meet the medical personal care needs of individual students, or if there are supports necessary for safety or behavior management. In some cases, the TAs may appear to be assigned directly to a student, but in many cases they serve the needs of several students in a class and are more of a support to the teacher in terms of enhancing the educational opportunities within that class and helping with classroom management and that kind of thing. But that's one of the reasons that we have another elected form of government in this province, the elected school boards, is that they do have the mandate and the authority to make those decisions. So we certainly give, as you well know, give them as much money as we can, and they make the choices and the decisions on how that is spent for the most part within their region. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Cumberland South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't disagree with the minister, but you are the Minister of Education, and the boards may be mandated to deliver programs that are determined by the Department of Education be delivered province-wide. My question is, do you as the minister agree that if a child in Nova Scotia has special needs and they're in a classroom and they meet the criteria and it's been determined by the board, by their professional people, that that child needs an EA, needs help, the teacher does and the other students in the classroom do you agree that resource has to be there?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I'm sure the honourable member appreciates, each board has professional staff that do assessments on the needs of the special needs of students in their system. And based on that assessment, they assign the appropriate staff. Now, certainly, what you might think is fair and expected might be different from what the family feels or the professional. I don't micromanage the school boards, and we try to make as much money available to provide a variety of supports within the classroom to enhance their ability to learn and benefit from that situation. But it's not up to my impressions. There's no entitlement or right of special education students to a certain specific activity, service or program. The boards manage as best they can, and they have the experience, they have the knowledge of the local situation. They usually have a lot of expertise and understanding of the particular family and child, so they're best able to match the available resources to that particular situation. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable the member for Cumberland South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank the minister for not answering that, because clearly it's not what I think or the family wants or what I'd ask was, when the board determines through their professional people that a child's in a classroom and that child needs resource person, did the minister agree that they should have it? That's, it's not what I think or the parents think. I agree. It's what the child needs. And if those professional people say that child needs a resource, I'm asking the minister, does the minister agree that that resource should be there for that child?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I appreciate, I think, what the honourable member is trying to do here. Just as you're suggesting that it's not your opinion and it's not the families or whatever, I don't have expertise as the Minister of Education in deciding what are the best services and programs available for children with special needs in a school system. So enough money is provided to the school board to provide a basic level of support. And I'm sorry, but that's as far as I can go. I'm not going to be in a position of judging decisions made by school boards nor micromanaging. So if you have a particular situation you'd like to bring to our attention, then we'd certainly be prepared to review it and take a look in conjunction, in cooperation with the school board. Thank you.
The honourable member from Cumberland South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank the Minister. Just to make it clear, I wasn't talking about a specific case. I have some cases I can bring, and I will bring them to you, and I'll ask your department to look at them. But I was just asking generally if a minister, I don't know what Minister of Education wouldn't agree with what I just asked. I asked that the professional people determined, and if the minister here doesn't know, I don't know who Nova Scotia would know. I think any ordinary thinking person would say if a child needs help, they probably should have it. I mean, anyway, that's okay. I'll move on. I will tell you that EAs are very important in my area. People are very concerned about their children getting the proper resource help in classrooms. I've had parents come to me and they're very concerned about what they perceive as being the children not receiving the additional resource they need. And I will come back to the minister, and if the minister's on for another few hours and another day, maybe we'll have a chance to come back with some names. Just to move on, one simple question. Is early childhood intervention under the Department of Education?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Department of Education is not involved in early intervention, except that there is a pilot project going on with the Straight Board, and it's called the EDI project, and it's an early childhood assessment strategy trying to assess children before they start school. And I would suspect that most of the early intervention initiatives are undertaken by either the Department of Community Services or possibly in partnership with the Department of Health. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable the member for Cumberland South.
Mr. Chair, and thank the Minister. I was just going to mention that there's an early childhood intervention program in Cumberland County. I know I've met with them as well, and they're very concerned in regards to children with special needs who are preschool now. And they're concerned as well what's going to happen in the future in regards to EAs in classrooms. And it's, again, I'm sure it's an issue province-wide, but certainly something I've heard a lot about, particularly over the summer for some reason, in my own area. And I know that those parents are very interested to hear what you as a minister have in plans for the future for the boards in regards to resources and what funding they can expect, particularly for those who will be coming the public school system looking for additional resources. Just want to mention, I'm going to share, Mr. Chair, I'm going to share some of my time with the Honourable Member for Hants West. I just have a few more short questions. These are around buildings, which I know the deputy's well aware of, and I just first of all I want to mention the Spring Hill High School project. It was announced, I guess, 5 or 6 years ago. At that time, it was $3.65 million. It was put off, and construction has just begun this year. I can tell you the community is very excited about that renovation that's currently underway. The previous minister and previous government committed to increase that $3.65 to $7 million. It's been announced. Again, the first phase is completed, and looking at another portion of that phase hopefully this winter. And they're trying to do the work while the children continue to use the building. And trying to do some of the work on the weekends and evenings, which is great. We have a steering committee that's well in place, and they're very appreciative of the work being done there. I'm just wondering if you could tell me what future plans your department has in regards to Spring Hill High School, the renovation that's underway now, and what we can expect as far as timelines when that may be completed.
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, it's an exciting project, and I can understand the honourable member's interest in it. The information that I'm provided is that we did move $300,000 from next year into this year to make a strong start. So that gives a total of $2.6 million for this year. Then there'll be $1.7 million invested in 10-11 and $2.2 million invested in 11-12 and $700,000 to finish off in 12-13. Now, there certainly has been some interest in an additional $500,000, and it's something we're considering, and you know, there seems to be some good rationale or arguments for that, and we'll see what we can accommodate into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Cumberland South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for that. I will say that, in fact, yesterday morning I attended a school steering committee, and there was your department was well represented, and I want to say publicly, and I said to them yesterday that they've done a tremendous job here in regards to moving this project forward, and they deserve a lot of credit. And I told them that yesterday, and it's a pleasure to work with these people. They're fantastic professional people, and they represent the department well. And as was said yesterday at the meeting, this is a project that it's been a long time coming, but it's a project that's even my understanding is, and I don't understand the tendering process as well as your department folks would, but even the next part would not have to be tendered, that it's already included in the first tender, so they could actually, if there were additional dollars available, could be expended this year before the end of the year, and it's ready to move now. Really, I believe I understand right that it wouldn't require a whole lot of work to make it happen, and if that becomes a reality, that would be welcome news there as well in that community and at that school. The other one is the Oxford High School, which again, very appreciative of the fact the department, the project's well underway. I believe it's due to open, it's a new P to 12 in Oxford. I believe it's due to open the first semester, or the first of January, I believe, in 2011. I'm just wondering if the Minister would have any information in regards to that project, whether it's on time and if that's still the expected opening date.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the honourable member for the question. We're anticipating spending almost $10.5 million this year, and we're hoping that it will open in December of this year. And we've also included another $1.1 million for next year, just to tidy up some special projects on that. So it's certainly well underway, and we foresee it opening on time. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Cumberland South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, thank you to the Minister for the answer. I know that community looks forward to that opening date as well. I'm glad that it's on time, and I believe on budget as well. I understood from, which is great. Just two other quick things, Minister. One is and I think the deputy would be disappointed if I didn't bring it here, is River Hibbert School. River Hibbert, Madam Minister, it may not be an area you're aware of, but it's something that's been debated for years. There was an attempt on several occasions to move the children from that facility to adjoining facility, in fact in Amherst, and it was very much opposed by myself and by the community. We're successful in keeping the children there where the community wants them, where they want to be educated in their own school. Announcement was made earlier this year that $6 million would be spent to renovate to close the elementary and to renovate the high school into P to 12, I believe, removing a part of the older portion and renovating what was left into a P to 12. And again, announcement was made to the community of $6 million. They were very excited about that. I think finally they had some security in regards to the future of their children with their educational opportunities at home. So I'm hoping the Minister can tell me today that plan is still in place and that we can expect to see that happen soon.
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Chair, and yes, I do have good news for the honourable member. As he can appreciate, we're going to renovate the old high school, close the elementary school, and it's anticipated that it's going to open in 2012.
The Honourable, the member for Cumberland South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the Minister. So you're saying it would be completed. The P to 12 would be renovated and completed and open in 2012? So when would you expect the renovation to actually take place? And one thing I would like to ask, just so we have on the record, I don't believe there's any need in the community for a school review process, is there, where if the community is supportive of I thought we saw a legal opinion that thought that if it was something the community wanted, and it was in fact not going to remove children from the community, that in fact closing the elementary and renovating the high school to P to 12 meant no children would be transferred to the community, that there was a belief that it didn't have to go through the review process. I wonder if the minister might be able to substantiate whether that's fact or not, and maybe you could tell me when you expect to start the renovation on that school.
Thank you. The Honourable, the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've put in $300,000 for this year, and $2.3 million for 10-11.
Could the Honourable Minister please repeat?
Certainly.
Okay.
We've put in $300,000 for this year, $2.3 million for 10-11, $1 million for 11-12, and $2.4 million for 12-13. And I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the issue he's talking about, the students. Perhaps it's some information I can get and get back to you on that. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable Member from Cumberland South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, thank you to the Minister. I probably should quit while I'm ahead, but I just have one more question, and then I'll let you go. It's in regards to the, there was an announcement as well in regards to the elementary schools in Spring Hill. There's been some debate in Spring Hill about what the future for elementary children should be in Spring Hill, and I know that, anyway, there was an announcement back earlier again this year, at the same time that River Hibbert was announced in regards to $4 million for renovations to Spring Hill Elementary. I'm just wondering if the Minister can tell me if that's still planned with the department and maybe what year that would be, because I do believe it's an out year, but I'm not sure. But Minister, maybe you could just tell me if that's still planned with the department to move forward with that.
Thank you. The Honourable, the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the projections are certainly well into the future, but the information I have now is we're waiting for the board to decide which of the two buildings that they're going to use, and we're projecting $1 million for 2012-13, $1.5 million for 13-14, $1.2 million for 14-15, and finishing with $1.217 million in 15-16. So certainly, I know the timeline is quite extended, but that's the way the capital construction list works, and so it, you know, I don't foresee any problems with meeting that projection. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable Member from Cumberland South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Minister and her staff again for tonight. I appreciate your candidacy in regards to the questions and the answers, and if I understood right what you just said, I believe there will be an opportunity for public consultation, because it is a few years away, and I know that the board hasn't determined, no more than the Department of Education determined, where that $4 million could be spent. So hopefully there'll be some public consultation to help determine where that money could be spent. But again, on people in my area, I just want to say thank you very much for your answers tonight. I appreciate it, and good luck with the rest. Thank you.
Thank you. The Chair now recognizes the Honourable Member from Hants West. The Honourable Member has approximately 26 minutes left.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I welcome the opportunity to get involved in the debate on the estimates in education this evening, and have a number of questions, and I want to thank my honourable colleague for sharing his time with me, and thank the Minister for being here and allowing us to go through this bit of a process, and to your staff as well. I know how much fun and they enjoy it here, maybe some more than others. Dennis. I'm going to start with my middle school, Hants West Middle School, which you may or may not be familiar with. I'm sure the deputy is not surprised by this being brought up this evening, but this has been an ongoing issue for some months now. Back in the spring this year, and maybe even a little bit before spring, there seemed to be some environmental issues or some that were being raised, people having allergies or some environmental concerns and illness, the teachers and staff alike both, and a number of them were off at different times. A number of studies were done and different work and analysis and so on, and there's been a few meetings, and recently, I'm going to say 3 weeks ago now perhaps, there was a meeting at the Brooklyn Elementary School where we had some professionals out to speak to the issues. A very well attended meeting, of course, parents very concerned, as are the students, with the issue of Hants West Middle School. And I'm just wondering, Minister, if you're familiar with this Project One, and I'm assuming that you are, and what is the current status? Because I know all summer went by, there was a plan, they pulled out of there a little bit early, and I know this firsthand because my daughter goes there, and she's now in Windsor. But anyway, they pulled out of there a bit early in June with a plan to renovate, and things would be expedited with no one there. It would be easier than trying to renovate a piece and block it off and so on. And that all makes sense. I don't think anybody's arguing that. But all summer goes by, and there's absolutely no activity going on at the Hants West Middle School, and people are asking questions and wondering what exactly is the current status of this project, and I'm wondering if you can just update us this evening on the status of this.
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the honourable member's interest in this situation, and I'm pleased to be able to say that that was actually the very first school I visited once I became Minister of Education. And I had a very interesting and extensive tour of the building, along with the principal and the superintendent of schools, and I was accompanied by the deputy. So I was very impressed with the renovations that had already taken place, and some of the unique features of that educational facility. When it's finished, it's going to be a gem in terms of school, especially for the middle school level. One of the reasons there was a delay, I wanted to be sure that it wasn't that the illnesses reported by staff and students that were raising such a concern in the community. I wanted to assure myself that it wasn't a sick building, and that we weren't just investing a lot of money into something that was never going to be a healthy building. And we had a lot of expert advice, and I am satisfied now that any problems were the result of the, I forget what they called it, but the cleaning up after the ongoing construction that was happening at relatively the same time that school was in. And so now those students are on split shifts with Avonview, and while I realize that may be an awkward situation, I understand that the transition went extremely well, and that both staffs are being very cooperative, and certainly students and families are coping extremely well, and realize that the reward for all of this is going to be a wonderfully new renovated building in their community. So I want to assure the honourable member that we're moving ahead. We've invested $5.365 million this year. Another 500,000, sorry, that's what, yes, that's what we set for this year. In 10-11, another 500,000, and we realize there may have to be a little bit of additional money, and we're going to look at various ways of how that might be provided. But it's a well-constructed, excellent building. It just needs to be upgraded with the new renovations, and I think it will certainly be something the community and students can be very proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Hants West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for that answer. And I know that school well. I spent a few years there myself, and it is a great building. The work, much needed, no question about that. And it was a great commitment made to that school a number of years ago, and unfortunately it has taken a very long time to get completed. I'll come back to the Avonview split shift in a few minutes, but I want to ask just another question about this Hants West Middle School and the commitment there financially. That's great. It's good to see this getting done and moving on. What, in your opinion, Minister, from what you understand, do you see students back in that school this school year?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly the early indication, I mean, we were trying for December, but it looks more realistically that it's going to be March, next March. Thank you.
The Honourable the Member for Handsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in saying next March, Minister, even that people, I mean, we hear all kinds of different takes on this. Is that realistic next March? And the only reason I'm asking you that, you spoke to it a few minutes ago by way of commitments in obviously 9, 10, and then 10 and 11. So this is going to go on for a while before every dollar is going to be spent to complete the renovation. And if it were the end of March, and maybe it will, maybe it won't be, we'll see. But have you got a guarantee from the contractor they're going to be finished there in March? I know that's a difficult question, but I am curious, giving that date, if you have something, somewhat of a guarantee that that's the case. And just on the second part of that, I'll come back to my next question. I'll let you answer that one maybe, Minister.
All right. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
These are some of the questions that the board is looking into, and certainly if they have a more accurate projection, they'll get back to us. As you can appreciate, when you renovate so significantly an old building, you run into unexpected situations, and you know, any contractor is going to say that they can't, you know, they can't commit to a certain date because they don't know what they're going to find. And also, as part of the larger project, they're going to be looking at the septic field, and that kind of work usually needs to be done over the summertime. So there are some intangibles that we just can't confirm at this stage. But because of the problems before about the initial renovations going on at the same time the students were in, you know, I'm sure the board is trying to err on the side of getting as much of the construction and renovation done without the students in the building to prevent perhaps some of those sensitivities being triggered again. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Handsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I didn't think that you would have a yes or a no to a commitment on a date. It's just generally probably pretty hard to say how much longer that will take. And it has been a slow process. There is, you mentioned the septic field there. There are issues, or seem to be issues there with that, and I would see this taking some time to complete. If it were, say, March, April, May, somewhere along there completed, would we actually take the time to move the students back in for the completion of the school year? Was a question that was raised at this meeting where the experts were there, and of course they didn't know what that would be. That would be a board decision, but interested in what the discussion has been with the board and whether we would move something that will probably fairly well oiled by the time March gets here if we continue at this pace with a split shift and students into a routine for their grade 9 year and things like that. And well, regardless of what year, they're coming on to the latter part of the year. They're now in a routine and they're looking toward, you know, completion for whatever they need, exams, etc. So.
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly those are decisions that will be made by the board, but I know there was some interest in having next year's graduating class graduate from their own stage. And, you know, I think everyone is mindful of that, but at the same time, we need to finish as much work as possible before the students move back into the building. So the board will balance out all those pressures and concerns and needs, and I'm sure they'll give me the best advice possible, and they'll move the students in when it's in their best interest. But I understand the honourable member's concern, but it's just I can't project what's going to happen because there are so many unknowns. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable the Member for Handsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, I'll leave that West Hants Middle School. I appreciate your time on that and your answers on that as well, and hopefully that will move along as smoothly as possible, and we'd certainly like to see that project completed. March would be great if we could do it by then. Some people are still of the belief that we'll be back in there in January, but given that there's not a whole lot happening, I can't see that, to be perfectly honest. and certainly with no commitment from a contractor, because as you say, it's fair. They don't know what they're going to run into in a building that old, and I know that there are a number of things they're finding as they move along in that construction and the different phases. I want to talk a little bit about some other schools that I have there. Hansport had an announcement, Hansport School. I forget the exact date, but back in the early spring, of a commitment from the previous government, a couple of $1 million or more toward renovation. This school is in rough shape. It's probably a school that's in the roughest shape, and I'm not sure, Minister, if you visited that school or not, but there's much work that does need to be done in this school, like many others, and I appreciate that as well. But a financial commitment has been made to that school, and I'm wondering the current status of that commitment, whether the new government plans on keeping those commitments that were made, or has some changes in mind.
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly we intend to keep that commitment, and as the Honourable Member has suggested, it's projected some time out. We're looking at about $350,000 being spent in 11-12 and 2.6 the next year in 12-13. So roughly about $3 million will be allocated to that school for the renovations. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable the Member for Handsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for that update. Also, along with that was the 3 Mile Plains Elementary School, which was an announcement was made with regards to a new gym. Now, that was a couple of years out, I believe, but again, I'd like you to speak to that and the years that we're looking at, if this commitment will still be honored. Those questions, of course, have been asked since the changes in June, and I certainly assured others that I would raise them here in this House with the Minister. So I'd like your thoughts or your comments on the commitments to 3 Mile Plains Elementary School as well.
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the 3 Miles Plains District School is much further out in terms of capital expenditure projections. We're looking at approximately $4.6 million, and it would be in the years 14, 15, 15, 16. But it's very much a part of the capital or the alterations and additions list. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Handsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, for the answer. Now I want to come back to Avonview School. Beautiful school. A few questions with regards to the Avonview School, though. The split shifting. I just can't recall your words a few minutes ago. Comfort, maybe, or everybody has fallen into some routine. I don't think everything is quite, that people are quite as happy in a number of ways. I know I hear from a lot of parents. I know they're calling the board, they're calling me, and we're trying to do our best. And basically my answer back to them has been, at least we have a place to go. Our children are getting an education. That is very important. They understand that. But they're not happy, I can tell you. And it's not the first time, and the deputy may recall a number of years back, we've had a split shift in our area before, and we worked through it, and let's hope we don't have it again, but we tend to work through these challenges. And this is a bit of a challenge. And we're, 5 weeks maybe in now, roughly, or so. And I'm just curious, are you getting a regular update on how processes are working here, or have you been briefed on this situation? Or I'm assuming someone in the department has, and maybe there isn't a need to brief the minister. Perhaps the deputy has been briefed regularly, but I'd like to know the status and how regular those updates are, if there are any.
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly the Deputy Minister has had the most recent contact, and I believe perhaps a week ago he met with the Superintendent and Director, and they talked about some of the additional cost pressures that the double shift was creating for the board. I met with the Valley School Board a few weeks ago, and I have to say that when this issue was raised, I seem to be getting very positive feedback. I agree. I mean, everyone agrees that there's a huge adjustment to be made by everyone because of the circumstances. But I certainly got the impression from the school board members that not that things were necessarily going really smoothly, but that the adjustments were being made and any difficulties were being worked through, and that everyone realized that the end result was going to benefit everyone in that region, and there just seemed to be a lot of goodwill and cooperation. So while I can empathize with probably not so minor inconveniences that staff and students and families are experiencing, I think, the end result is going to perhaps be worth the pain, and I just would encourage everyone to be as patient as possible and to work together to ensure that the renovations go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member from Handsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And our board has done an exceptional job, I think, so far in dealing with this. I know the Principal Landry there has been exceptional in offering tours to students and families to get them orientated on a regular basis, and his I was going to say deputies, but his vice principals, I guess we call them, and all staff, at the Avonview School, as well as those that work the middle school level. They've been absolutely fantastic, and the board has been very good as well. Margot Tate has done a fine job of keeping folks, I think, up to date at these meetings, although I think it's fair to say some really weren't thrilled with her answers, but she has, in fact, been keeping them up to date, along with some of the experts that she's brought in to do the tests. And Dr. Watson-Cree was out to the meeting I was at that evening, and very, very well informed. The people that were there certainly knows what she's talking about. People seem to have a comfort level with that. I think there were very few, it's probably fair to say, in that last meeting that were left there feeling as though they weren't informed or didn't know what to expect in the weeks and months ahead. One of the biggest issues, though, probably the most calls I've had, and probably most members take calls, but this is specific to the hours. With regards to the split shift, of course, you have the early morning bus and you have the later evening bus. And now that fall is upon us and winter soon to be here, the daylight hours are much shorter. The safety concern of students making their way to and from the bus stops is becoming a bit of an issue now. And some are walking a fair distance, and we'll get into that policy in a little while, but is there any plan to do anything extra by way of some of the safety of students? I know that, in the rural areas, there's not sidewalks, there's not lighting. They're walking on some routes like 215 and Highway 1 and Highway 14, et cetera, out there in the rural areas. Heavy traffic areas, speed limits are 70 and 80 in certain areas. We've had that looked at as well for potential changes. But, there's always policy that says, no, we can't do this or we can't do that. So I'm wondering about, there's probably two questions in here, is what are we doing to enhance safety during the hours of darkness, and it will be soon on both ends. Some of these children, of course, are younger, getting on in the mornings, grade 7s, just coming out of elementary school and moving up, and this is just one more challenge for them, really. It's a big step from 6 to 7 going into the middle school, high school levels. That's created its own challenges, as we probably all remember back. But to have this now to deal with the early hours is one thing, and I think they will adjust over time. But that daylight darkness issue is certainly something at the forefront of the parents' mind. And even on the older kids, they're concerned with that because they are walking on these highways. And I'm wondering about your thoughts on that, and I'll have a little bit more question-wise, but I'll give you this opportunity for now to speak to that part.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly appreciate the honourable member's concern about student safety, and I guess the best response I could make is to suggest that he get in touch directly with the school board and relay his concerns and those of the parents in that area, because those are decisions that are being made by the school board, and certainly they can ask for advice and support from the department, but they're the closest decision makers to that specific situation, and I would encourage him to both speak personally to school board officials, but also recommend that parents express their concerns, because we do want to ensure the safety, and I can understand where you know, when you're in split shifts, you're going to have earlier and later bus routes, and that school board is trying to accommodate, you know, two separate systems, you know, doubling up, and there obviously will be challenges. So I think the school board would be the best level to work through some of those. Thank you.
The honourable member for Hants West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that, Minister. And we meet in the Valley. I'm not sure what other areas do, but I know that the members that represent the Annapolis Valley Regional School Board meet a couple times annually to discuss a number of issues. But this will be probably similar to other issues. Where's the money going to come from? Because it will take money to enhance safety levels, perhaps during certain times of year. This year, mostly, it's not an issue generally speaking, but this year for our area, in the Evan View example and the split shift example, I would see there being some kind of controls in place to ensure that safety. And I don't know what those are right up. You know, perhaps it's people out there watching at stops or some kind of enforcement there. But there needs to be some discussion. We need to be able to go back to parents with some sort of answer other than just call the school board. Because I don't think that the parents that are concerned are getting their answers at the board. And I think they expect a higher level, in all honesty, to make those decisions. Because once they've generally talked to me, they've probably already almost always talk to their board rep, and because they haven't got the answer or the satisfaction that they want there, they take it the next step. And in over 3 years now since I've been the member for Hants West, I get many calls in May and many calls in the fall, just as school is ending and just as it is coming back in with regards to school bus stop issues. This just is enhanced it with the changes and the scheduling, and I appreciate it, as do they. But the time travel, you know, it's late in the day, the darkness, there's a number of things there. So it's fine to go back to the board, but in the end of the day, there's going to be a cost associated if you're really going to get out there and manage this for the year, I think, to try to enhance whatever we're going to do for safety. Whether that's people at stops, like crosswalk folks that we used to have and still have in some areas throughout just the course of this year, or the long winter days and months without not a lot of daylight, and managing that to help these kids safely to and fro. I know that there's a responsibility issue once they get off the bus, whose responsibility, you know, once they're home and things like that. But I see that's going to be an ongoing issue this year, and I had another call as late as this afternoon, and it was, you know, my kid's got to walk 1 kilometer, it's going to be dark, and we're concerned about his safety. I'll allow you to comment on that, sure. Go ahead.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chair, I just want to mention, when I referenced earlier the fact that the Deputy Minister had already been discussing some of these issues, it did include some discussion about additional transportation costs. And I have to say that one of the I don't know why I was surprised, but when I did the tour going around the province over a couple of months, meeting the various school boards, I must say I was pleasantly surprised at how supportive the school boards were in terms of recognizing that the Deputy Minister and senior officials at the department were always, you know, basically had an open door policy in terms of boards going to them when they had unique or unusual or extraordinary things happen, and asking the department to consider these additional costs. And I'm not saying that the money is there, but certainly the board knows that this is a very unusual circumstance. They've already started the discussion with the department through the Deputy Minister, and I'm sure over time that it'll be resolved. So I just, you know, obviously it would be an over expenditure, but student safety is important not only to the parents and the students and the school board, but also to the Department of Education. And this is an unusual circumstance, so I would just encourage the honourable member to relay those concerns to the board, and they in time will be relayed to the department, and we'll see what we can do. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Hants West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and certainly I would agree that the department has been very helpful over at least my years, and I'm sure many years before that, to all members who have had issues certainly around things like safety and such, has been responded to very quickly and certainly efficiently. And I think that the parents understand that the Department of Education is doing everything they can, and they understand too that they work within a certain a budget, and there's only so much money in that bucket, and there's many things to cover, and they understand and appreciate that. But as I'm sure you can appreciate, Minister, when it comes to one of their own children walking up the street, it's always seems to be enhanced that much more, and I can certainly appreciate that, and I know that in a utopian world that every child would be let off as well at their own doorstep, and you know, that would be great too, but we know that that's not a reality. I want to get into, how much time do I have left, Mr. Chair? I'm thinking that I may be getting close to my time. I'm time?
No.
Oh, I have time?
Time is done.
Time is up. Thank you.
Yes, the time is up. For
Thank you very much.
the
I'll come
honourable
back a
member.
little bit later and look forward to some more questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And the chair will now recognize the honourable member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Minister, the Minister of Finance has said the Tories' prepayment to the universities for the 2009-10 fiscal year left a situation that was, quote, complex and confusing. Justification this government is now using to do the same thing and prepay the 2010-11 sum to the universities this year. Can you please explain the complexities behind this decision?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will attempt to answer the honourable member's question, keeping in mind that the decision to do the prepay was made as part of the budget preparation by the Department of Finance. And quite frankly, the Department of Education is only too delighted to get that money and be able to relieve the universities of their anxiety about whether or not they were actually going to get paid the third year of the Memorandum of Understanding. So it's good news for the Department of Education. As I indicated earlier, this prepay is going to, it does have some advantages for the universities. It's going to give them a little bit more flexibility, and quite frankly, they and the department are delighted. They think this is a good news story. So I'm not sure exactly what details the honourable member is looking for, and if she could be a little more specific, I will either answer the question or attempt to get the information from the Department of Finance. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't understand what is so complex and confusing about this payment. To me, it's very simple. It's just politics. So I don't understand why you would say, if the Tories did it, it was wrong, but when we do it, it's okay. That, to me, is not complex, it's not confusing, it's political, it's hypocritical. So my question is, please tell us what's complex and confusing, because in my books, two wrongs don't make a right.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The memorandum of understanding with the universities essentially was a commitment by the previous government to try to stabilize university funding to the extent that it would allow tuition increases to stop. And our government felt that they wanted to start with a fresh slate. And so buying out the third year of the MOU by prepaying early enables us to make in future budgets to make an annual contribution in the year that the money is going to be spent. So it cleans away the commitments from the previous government and allows our government to go forward on an annual basis in terms of financially supporting the post-secondary institutions.
The honourable member for Bedford, Birch Cove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. By that logic, you should just pay me up front for the next 4 years because we're not going to have an election for 4 years. It doesn't make sense. Now, you also cited it as a reason for doing this that it was to relieve the anxiety of universities over whether they were going to get paid in the third year. And my question is, are we going to now start paying out everyone in advance who is anxious about getting their payments? You know, in my writing, we're anxious about whether we're going to get funding for a school. So do we pay that out early because we're anxious? I don't think citing the anxiety of universities makes sense.
The Minister for Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I mean, the honourable member makes a good point. Certainly, that was one of the results. That it was a very minor secondary reason for doing the prepayment. The main 99% of the reason was to clean the slate, to start fresh, and to honor the commitment that the former government made to the universities, and that's what we did. I mean, we can continue on in this vein, but it was not a decision made by my department. And if you'd like to get on to some other issues over which I have some authority or some knowledge, I would be pleased to continue with the budget estimates. Thank you.
The honourable member for Bedford, Birch Cove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While I appreciate the minister's desire to move off this subject, I don't quite feel ready yet. I'm quite frankly confused about this need to clear off this item when your government paid $100,000 for a report, not an audit, but a report. And that report by Deloitte & Touche says a prudent financial management practice for recurring assistance payments like those made to universities under the MOU would be to avoid one-time or prepayments. And so what did we do? We prepaid and we made one payment. We didn't make it in quarterly payments, we did it all at once. It goes on to say, once such a pattern is broken, new financial planning is required to resume recurring expenditure in the multi-year forecasts. So they're advising you to stop this. And so for $100,000 worth of advice, we then turn around and prepay the universities. And I simply do not understand the rationale, nor I suspect do most people.
I wonder if the honourable member would table the document that she quoted from, please. Thank you. Thank you. The chair now recognizes the Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honourable member, I have no more to say on this subject. So, you know, if you would like to get your opinions on table, then, you know, present them, and I'll certainly listen respectfully, but those recommendations were made to the Department of Finance. I've explained it in terms of what I know, how it relates to the Department of Education, and I appreciate your point of view. I differ with your point of view, but I don't feel that budget estimates is the opportunity to get into a debate on that issue. Thank you.
The chair now recognizes the honourable member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With all due respects, this is called budget estimates, and this is in the budget. So this is exactly the right place to have this conversation, exactly the right place. Has a new agreement with the amendment allowing for the 2010-11 prepayment been signed?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your patience. No, it hasn't been signed. I mean, obviously, we have to wait till the budget is passed, and then we'll enter into discussions with the universities in terms of signing that prepayment. But it's not going to happen until the end of March 2010, and so we have plenty of time to work out those details. Thank you.
The honourable member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Can you explain why the 2010-11 MOU prepayment was for $341 million rather than the $348 million outlined in the original 2008 agreement?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the difference is the $7 million allocated to the Nova Scotia Agricultural College. That college is a government entity, so its books are consolidated with the provincial government, and so a prepayment is not possible.
The Honourable Member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Nova Scotia universities have received 2 prepayments of the MOU for the past 2 fiscal years. Given that the MOU was not followed as set out by the initial 2008 agreement, what are your government's plans when it expires in 2011? Will you renegotiate another MOU with the universities?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We haven't made a decision on whether or not we're going to enter into another MOU, whether it be 1 or 2 or 3-year agreement. And certainly the intent, as I mentioned earlier, of the previous 2 agreements was to stabilize university funding to put a freeze or lower university tuition. And certainly that remains a goal of this government, and so we'll work towards that. Certainly this year, tuition for the college system, the Nova Scotia Community College, those tuitions did not rise at all. And I believe there's actually the university students will be paying less, and the next year I believe the university students from outside Nova Scotia will be paying less. So the MOUs have achieved considerable success in lowering tuition fees, and we'll certainly be discussing the advantages and disadvantages of the MOU process with the universities over the next several months. Thank you.
The honourable member for Bedford Birch Cove.
I'm curious, if your government is going to sign an agreement for 2 years or 3 years or whatever, are you going to make these sort of prepayments, bulk payments, whatever you call them, with those two, or are you going to actually adhere to the agreement?
Thank you, Anne. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Minister of Finance has certainly indicated that it's the intention of the government to make sure that the annual contributions happen in the year that they're going to be spent. There may be, I guess all I'm saying is that we're open to discussions with the universities. There are other issues that might be covered in an MOU. Certainly there's a lot of concern from all universities about the declining student enrollment base. And, you know, it may be that an MOU might look at a joint strategy on how to attract more students to all our universities in Nova Scotia. So there are other issues that might be included in that agreement. So all I'm suggesting is that I'm anxious to hear what the universities see as the next steps, and knowing that we will not be committing over the next few years, at least, to multiple year funding commitments. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Bedford Birch Cove.
I'd like to move on now, much as I hate to leave the subject of the MOU. I'd like to move on now to the special payments. It's a line item on page 7.2 of the budget estimates. Special payments. I'm wondering if the minister could please outline what those special payments were for, and you know, itemize them and give us the dollar amounts.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate your patience. We'll have to get more detail, but it includes such things as the NASCAD mortgage, but we don't have a further breakdown, so we can get that information and table it. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Chair. And I note that there's an increase from last year of about actually, I'm not sure how much the increase was from last year for these special projects, special payments rather. So perhaps when you are giving us that information, you could indicate what those payments were last year and where the increase comes in.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're going to try to identify that before the end of the evening, so I expect to be able to get back to you fairly quickly. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Bedford Birch Cove.
I'd like to actually quote here from an article from April 16, 2000. Free tuition is not a pipe dream. And it was from a contender for the provincial NDP leadership. Free tuition is not a pipe dream, Cole Harbour Eastern Passage MLA Kevin DeVoe said Saturday in Halifax. It's time we started thinking of a post-secondary education as a right, not a privilege. And Mr. DeVoe outlined his plan for free post-secondary education in Nova Scotia